Hello and welcome to Just Hoops. The Denver Nuggets are your 2022-2023 NBA champs, led by Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Coach Michael Malone. They had a fantastic season from start to finish, and they finished at the mountaintop, specifically because of their play at the defensive end, in my opinion. Going to the numbers of their defense, the regular season was pretty up and down. They finished 15th in terms of defensive rating. They didn't do anything especially well, except rebounding was their strong suit. But in the playoffs, they really locked in. They were 4th in defensive rating in the playoffs. They did a great job in all categories. They just didn't force a lot of turnovers, and they were just overall solid. This video is going to dive into their defensive success and talk about what they did in each round that made them successful and some things that carried over throughout. In the first round of the playoffs, the Denver Nuggets faced the Minnesota Timberwolves, where Anthony Edwards gave them a ton of challenges on the perimeter as an attacker, and they also had their hands full with guys like Cat and Gobert on the interior scoring down there. So to talk about specific things that made them successful were first the way that they help. So throughout the season, and we'll see this throughout the playoffs, that Jokic is their helper. He is the anchor to their defense. You can see here he is shrinking in early, and then beyond that, you can see that the box, the lane, is their cue for where they position themselves off of the ball. You can see here Jeff Green and Bruce Brown are loaded on the blocks, and then they had an active gap with Jamal Murray. A thing that they have done throughout the entire season is only help when necessary. You can see here that there is a drive-by. Michael Porter Jr. gets blown by. Jokic comes over and helps initially. Jamal Murray's loaded, and then everybody's willing and able to rotate. Ant's getting downhill. They help on him. They do a great job in rotation in general, but they don't want to help unless if they have to. Here, Aaron Gordon, great job individually. They have a little bit of activity in the gap, but overall they keep it one-on-one. They don't like sending help unless if it's absolutely necessary, and it helps them rebound at a high level and be one of the best rebounding teams, but they also like sending help from the low man when the time comes. You'll see throughout a couple of these last few clips that they help from the low man. That's the way that they prevent these shots at the rim, and also they're highly active in the gaps against Minnesota in particular. They were really stunting heavy, stabbing at the ball, trying to force turnovers that way. Post touches for Cat and Gobert, they were really diving down there, stabbing at the ball, and then rotating off of it. And this was ways for them to force turnovers, just be more active, and then make it harder for them to score in the paint. They did the best job out of everyone in playoffs at getting paint points, and it's because of the size that they had, but they did a great job overall. And in this last clip against Minnesota, you can see it all come together. Aaron Gordon doing a great job individually straight up on the ball. Bruce Brown loading that gap in a spot to stunt. Jamal Murray's coming over early to load the box. Jokic and MPJ are zoned up on the weak side, and they get the stop. Now to go to their second round matchup against the Phoenix Suns. They presented a lot of different challenges with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and you can see that they responded by doing the similar things in terms of how they help. The main guy is Jokic, the one that's going to protect the rim and anchor. They're willing and able to send more bodies to the ball, specifically Booker and Durant, from a two-man way spot and typically a non-shooter. You can see that it's consistent throughout these clips. Christian Brown doing a great job here at coming early. Bruce Brown helping in that gap heavily off of two non-Durant, non-Booker guys. Here you can see with Kevin Durant, Jeff Green's doing a great job at pressuring the ball, being up into it. Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon are loading their strong side early, and then the box is zoned up on the weak side. They just showed a lot of pressure and a lot of bodies. They extended their defense out much further. They were willing and able to pick up full court when necessary. They were loading up toward Kevin Durant and Booker early and often just to make them have to take tough twos. They really made it difficult for them to get paint with how early they loaded the box, and then they were doing a terrific job in rotation at running them off the line, getting them out of rhythm from three, and forcing them to put the ball on the ground. One thing that is evident throughout these clips, even though that they were extending their defense, they put more guys in the gap, they were plugging early, they were still only helping when necessary. When there was an absolute red flag, red emergency happening, that's when they sent the bodies fully toward the ball to prevent shots at the rim or just to force them into tough things. Here, Jeff Green helps early on Devin Booker. They end up doubling, and they do a terrific job at rotating and forcing a turnover. This extended defense, the way that they were really up into the ball, pressuring, and then also staying wider in their positioning off the ball. They weren't necessarily using the box as their cues. They were much higher and wider and only plugging the rim from the low man spot when absolutely necessary, when Jokic wasn't in the play, and it was just forcing turnovers. It was causing havoc. It was taking the Suns out of their rhythm. They have two of the most elite scorers in the league, and they went out there to pressure them, show them as many bodies as possible, helping when necessary when they had an advantage just to take that away and make the other guys beat them. I think that this was one of their most complete defensive just showings throughout the playoffs. In these 4 games that they won, the 2 games that they lost, Devin Booker went absolutely bananas. But overall, the way that they were connected, they were rotating well, they were pressuring, they were forcing turnovers, they were flying around here, they were below the break, they sent that trap, it ended up in a turnover. Just all these little things and how they extended their defense and created more pressure opportunities out of it was cool to see, while also keeping their principles necessary and how they helped, where the help came from, and how they positioned themselves off the ball. Now to move on, we're going to talk about their Western Conference Finals matchup against the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers presented different challenges in terms of having Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who are heavy rim threats and rim attackers, so they had to do things a little bit differently. We're going to slow these first 2 clips down just to see how they operate it. You can see that they're loading up toward LeBron James, heavy in the gaps, just trying to make it harder for him to drive, but they're doing a great job at having Jokic ready at the rim and MPJ zoning up, but they're not committing to these shooters. They're closing out short. They're pressuring the ball for sure when they have the ball and they're activated, but then off of that, they're staying home. They're loading up the box again. Jokic is the primary guy at the rim. But overall, they want the guys off of LeBron James and Anthony Davis to go make plays, be shooters, show something that they haven't shown all season long, and go make plays outside of those two. Yes, LeBron James and Anthony Davis presented a lot of issues in terms of how they were heavy paint presence and just doing their thing at the rim, but overall, they held the same principles defensively. They stayed home unless if absolutely necessary to help. They loaded up the box. They did a great job at communicating and rotating when there was a paint touch and when help was needed at getting back out, closing out, making it tough for these guys off the ball to make shots and make plays happen. But overall, I think the way that they protected the rim, they loaded up the rim, they finished possessions and won the rebounding battle against this massive Laker unit. I think that they did a great job overall at just committing to what they do and then amplifying it to match the Lakers and their strengths and try to negate them. The way that they helped in the paint, the way that they made things difficult in the paint was awesome to watch. You can see throughout these clips, it's early help by Jokic. They had the box loaded on the weak side early. They just made it so challenging for the Lakers to touch paint and be successful in the lane time and time again. And it was so cool to see just how they were able to also rotate out, be connected, and make plays happen across the floor. To wrap things up, watch this last play. Jamal Murray commits on help. Jokic is also at the rim. They did a good job at zoning up, get the stop, and win the Western Conference Finals. And lastly, let's talk about the Nuggets versus Heat in the NBA Finals. When it comes to the defensive end of the floor in the Finals, I think that this first clip does a tremendous job. Gabe Vincent, one-on-one, very limited help, some activity in the gap, but you can see everybody staying home in the passing lanes, very flat in the gaps, just making it difficult for guys when they do touch paint to kick it out and get a good opportunity off of paint touches. The way the Miami Heat were successful all playoffs along were playing off of paint touches, kicking it out, and forcing rotations. That's what made them as successful against the Knicks, Boston, Milwaukee, and then Denver decided, hey, let's make you guys make plays one-on-one. You can see throughout all these clips, they're getting the paint touches, but the way that Denver's in a spot to limit rotational movement is awesome. They did a good job at staying flat in the gaps. They were active when they can make a play, force turnovers, and things of that nature. But overall, playing one-on-one, just stay in position to negate drives and make it harder for guys to touch paint. The way everyone on the roster committed to what they were doing in the finals was special to see. Guys were guarding their yard. They were highly active at the point of attack, applying the appropriate amount of pressure to their matchup. They were doing a great job in the help side and in gaps at positioning themselves to make passes out tougher, and also getting out hot hands, getting back in their stance, and playing one-on-one with the ball handler. And then knowing when to help, how to rotate, communicating, and being highly connected at this end of the floor was a reason for their success. And in this last possession, you can also see Jokic did a great job at the rim being that anchor, and then on the kick out, Aaron Gordon was sensational one-on-one, being an all-around player in this series, and specifically at the defensive end of the floor, setting the tone. But I think in the finals, Jokic was special at this end of the floor, being an anchor, being solid, and just making it very difficult for the Heat to get good shot opportunities at the rim. The way here, he made the delay action tough, he made them fumble the pass, and then him being at the rim forced Jimmy into a tough shot. And then here, he's going to allow Christian Braun to be active, ending up forcing a turnover. The way he was anchoring the defense, being at the rim, being solid all the time, and just putting himself in position for the other guys on the floor to be successful, position themselves appropriately, and then make it all work. Jokic is the key to this defense at the end of the day, in my opinion. Yes, people don't see him as a great defender, but how he puts himself on the floor, where he positions himself, how he's able to make multiple efforts around the rim and clean up the glass is what made Denver special all season long at this end of the floor, and specifically in the playoffs, what made them so good as a defensive unit. The way he flew around, the way he made it tough for inside passes to happen, the multiple efforts he made like this clip here. I think overall, he is the key to this defense, and specifically their ball screen coverage, which we'll talk about next. But overall, Jokic is special at this end of the floor, knew where to put himself, and it allowed everyone 1 through 5 and the bench to be successful throughout the entire playoff run. And to wrap things up, we got 2 clips to dive into their rotations more. Here, we get the downhill attack. Jokic closes out, then they got 2 guys coming to the rim, they rotate down and contest the 3 by Jimmy. And then this last clip here, we're going to get the drive by Jimmy Butler late game. Jamal Murray tries to stay solid individually, they get the help from Jokic at the rim, everybody else denies passes out, forcing the turnover. And then lastly, we're going to dive into their pick and roll coverage, which I think was a huge part in them winning the finals and getting all the way to the finals. They were able to throw a variety of coverages at teams and just do some things that you don't see often throughout the regular season. First, we're going to talk about their drop. They did a really good job with Jokic at understanding who they can drop against and how they can guard the ball in these situations, and then also staying home and being in proper position off the ball. Here against the Lakers, you'll see the drop coverage. Everybody else is loading the box kind of in an area to understand whether we stay home or if we help when necessary. The way that they helped against specifically Miami was that they wanted guys to stay home. We just talked about this in the last part of the base defense, but everyone kind of stayed home. They tried to make passes out tough and then keep it a 2-on-2 action. Against the Lakers, it was a lot of the similar things, but they were more willing to load up the box. And then even against Minnesota, when they did drop, they were more willing to load the paint and be more active behind the drop, just to make it more difficult for these non-shooting teams to get shots in the paint. And then nextly, we're going to look at their show. Jokic did a terrific job in showing in ball screens, being highly active, forcing turnovers, taking guys out of rhythm, and then the backside was also terrific. So let's look at this clip against Phoenix. You can see the show by Jokic, and then we get the early load of the box and just the zone up of the weak side, forcing the turnover. Here against Miami, we're going to get the show against Duncan Robinson. Jamal Murray helps come over to load the box, and then they force the miss on the roll. Here, we're going to get another example against Phoenix. They flattened the backside of the defense just to make it difficult for guys to get downhill against the show and get shots at the rim. And then this last clip here of the empty side, we're loading the box early. It's tough to get a good quality shot at the rim. On these empty side pick and rolls with the show, load the box and prevent rejections and just easy shots at the rim. And then when it is a loaded corner, you can see the low man comes in early off the 2-man side, plugs the rim, they zone up off of him, and it's just flattening out the backside of the defense, essentially. Here against Minnesota, we're going to see another example. You can see off the 2-man side, MPJ comes in and helps, and also Jamal Murray's pretty active on that block, just playing off of the flattened defensive look. Here against Phoenix, we're going to get Jeff Green plugging the rim, Bruce Brown zoning up on the weak side of the floor, just overall flying around, loading up the paint just to allow Jokic to make a play on the perimeter before he returns back to anchor the defense and be the guy in the middle of the paint. Overall, I think that this was their best defense in the pick and roll, the way that they were able to extend out, pressure the ball. Jokic's hands and feet are incredibly active at just taking offensive out of rhythm. And then beyond that, they do a great job at making plays behind him, loading the rim, making it very difficult to get the roller, get guys shots on the perimeter, even with a numbers advantage. They did a good job at forcing turnovers, making plays happen. And then overall, I think that just the way that they did this consistently throughout the season, guys knew where to be when the playoffs came, knew where to position themselves, and knew how to make plays in this style of defense. And then to talk a little bit about smaller covers, they switched 1 through 4 when possible and showed with smaller guys when they couldn't switch. The Nuggets are your 2022-2023 champs. They had an incredibly efficient and potent offense, but at the end of the day, the way that they guard it and were connected at the defensive end of the floor was championship level and a major reason why they won. So I hope you guys learned something about defense at the highest levels. For more content like this, please like, subscribe, and share, and we'll catch you in the next one.